Welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. A very special guest, his first interview. This is the first time he's done this. The legendary promoter of the NEWA, the New England Wrestling Alliance, Mr. Rocco Dellasandro. Rocco, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here and take a deep dive into your career and the behind the scenes of the NEWA and RIWA, your time as a promoter, and we'll talk about some of the past superstars of that scene. So rewinding to the very beginning, when you were growing up as a child, when did you first discover pro wrestling? What are your earliest memories of wrestling?
When I was young, I was born in 1939, so we didn't have TV. So I probably didn't see wrestling until after I got out of the Navy, probably around my first tour before I went in the Army. I think it was in 1960, in the late 60s, watching my son was watching the WWF back in the 70s, that would be. I think it was the late 70s or the early 70s. And I used to watch him on the couch with his friends watching the WWF. I sat there thinking to myself for a while. I said, it seemed like I don't know, it just seemed like it was possible that if they can do it, I could do it. And the most important thing was I wanted to do it because my son liked it. So I decided that if it was possible, something that would make him happy, something that he'd remember as he grows up, I can do it. So what I did was I went out and a couple of weeks later bought an old boxing ring, which originally came from Madison Square Garden. Once I got that, I got some of my son's friends, plus I put the word out that I was going to start a wrestling company. Got a little training gym, rented it out. Actually, all that really didn't cost that much. It was like, there was something I tried. I think I would try. What happened was it's kind of snowballed. What happened was I never realized there were that many kids that were interested in WWF wrestling and wanted to become superstars.
Sure.
One of the things that made us really, really successful was that all the kids had a desire to do it. And it was kind of a twofold win-win situation. One, it kept the kids off the street, away from drugs. Because one of the things I had with my policy was if you came to wrestle for me, I didn't care who you were free to do it, but you couldn't have drugs or you couldn't drink. And your vocabulary had to be clean because I wanted to run a family business. My intention was to raise money for schools and churches and charities, which we did. What we do would go to schools, give them half the gate and all the concessions. Actually, we gave them almost 2/3 of the gate. But the only money we really took was to cover the insurance and the gas for the truck, the rental, which is basically the rental was like I think $100 a day. Gas maybe about $30-40 unless we were going into Massachusetts or something. And the insurance was I had farmers insurance, and that cost me maybe a couple $100 for them couple of hours that I was doing the show. So we didn't have that much of an overhead, and whatever the difference was, it came out of our pocket anyway. We really never made money on it in the 10 years, 12 years we were doing it, but we did help a lot of charities, a lot of schools, and a lot of churches. And the guys, I didn't pay the guys, and they knew that. Their payment was they were on TV. They showed what they can do. I allowed them to dress the way they wanted to, make their own costumes. I allowed them to practice together to make to have their own show with the understanding that nobody could be physically nasty because there was children there. It was a family show. All right, number one. Number two, we went to schools and I didn't want violence. So we had just a regular clean show. The important thing was with us was that we made the kids happy. It kept the people I had, the crew I had, the wrestlers, all right, interested. It, it gave them identity. And what we did was to more or less sprinkle it so it become a little bit interesting because when you have kids for a while, it sort of gets a little worn out. We brought in WWF wrestlers. How that came about was kind of funny. I was on TV on public access, 2 hour show at I believe it was on Saturday night from 11 to 1, and then I was on Sunday, I believe from 10 to 12. On Thursday nights, I had a half an hour um, off the ropes, having the wrestlers be interviewed, and like I said, it kind of snowballed, and on TV, it kind of looked really professional and caught the eye of Vince McMahon from the WWF. Gave me a call, wanted to know who I was. I got invited up there to the WWF, to their headquarters, got to see Brown, met some of the wrestlers, wanted to know who was backing me, not realizing we were just a local small firm, but because of the TV exposure we had, plus all the costumes and the wrestlers we had, and because it was a 2 hour show, and there'd be like 5 or 6, 7 bouts. All right, so it looked kind of professional. We had a good professional photography crew, camera crew. We had good announcers. So it was like he was kind of confused a little bit. We became friends. And then I got exposed to be able to hire some of his wrestlers at a very, very cheap price. And what was interesting most about it was that I never realized, all right, how important it came to certain people, especially the kids that were wrestling. I think the most important thing out of this whole thing was I was able to do something I wanted to do. I was able to keep make my son, show my son I can do something. Um, it kept a lot of people together, made friends over the 12, 13 years. Some are still wrestling today, like Alfredo Wolverine and a few others,
Yeah.
and they got to be in their 50s or 60s. I mean, and it sort of not only made a bond between them, but it also gave them reason, accomplishment, friendship, and a belief in themselves. I never really thought when I did this, started this, that this would actually excel the way it did. I've had a lot of people call me, a lot of the wrestlers call me back over the years and thank me. I should thank them because without them, it would never have happened. I think and I hope that it gave others an opportunity or a desire and a belief that they can do something.
And at that time, you were one of the only shows in town. I mean, there wasn't a lot for Rhode Island wrestling specifically, and even in Massachusetts, there were some promotions, of course, but there wasn't as much as you see today with promotions all over the place and shows all the time. So when you first started this journey, do you remember how you went about trying to secure the schools and the different facilities? Was it difficult to get them?
I would go and see the my son played football for Cranston West. So I got to my name and I got to know the school itself. And I got to eventually when we went to different schools when he played football, I got to meet a lot of different people in different schools. Found out that some of their sports was hurting for money. Some of the schools like for programs, their music programs or their plays and so forth, they didn't have money because they all had budgets. So I made a proposal to them. I would ask them to use their gym free. In return, I would put a show on for them, offer them half or 2/3 of the gate and all the concessions. And all the money would go to them and whatever they needed it for or what they wanted it for. There was no restrictions on it. And I was insured. I told them my company was insured so that there was no liability to them. And most of them accepted it. Then I wanted my wife, who used to do a lot of charity work, was a commissioner for the Sachem District of the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. She was also the chairman for the national or the Rhode Island State Women's Association. So she had a lot of connections. So I got to meet a lot of people, and because of that, there was a lot of doors that were open for me from schools, charities, and different organizations where they allowed me to do a wrestling show. So I thank her for that because she had a lot to do with that. And that was more or less my contacts. Plus, I would go around to different churches and schools, especially like places where the charity groups were helping homeless people, and most of their money was given by charity. So if I put a show on for them, that was extra money that they put in their pocket. So um, wasn't much. We'd have like 200 or 300 people. We only charged like $3 or $4 a ticket. So if we got 500 people, you're locking $1,500 plus the concessions. So they would make that, but it was something. And it was something better than nothing.
Sure.
It gave the it gave my wrestlers a chance to show who they were and what they were, but it also helped the other people. So it was a win-win situation on both ends.
And when it comes to the venues, you've been to so many different venues over the years. Did you have a favorite? Was there one that stood out that was just a great setup, or maybe every time you went there, the crowd was extra hot? Was there a place that you would look forward to going every time?
That's hard to say because they were all really nice. One of the, I think one of the most memorable ones was I had a star, a young kid by the name of Gorgeous Gino Giovanni. We made him this star. He was probably around 15, 16, probably about 18, 17 years old. Really good looking. So we dressed him up almost like a millionaire's son with all types of costumes that were bright and shiny and so forth. And we had a 6'6", 200 or 325 gorilla wrestler who was his butler, and he used to carry this tray with his sort of his coffee and water and so forth on it, and come to the ring with it. And the girls used to go crazy. I think it was originally in North Providence. It was. And when after the show was over, that was the first time in my life that I ever understood what popularity and paparazzi was. When we got him outside, there was like 50 girls, and they were crawling all over him, pulling him, trying to rip his clothes. We finally got him in the truck. That was my first exposure, all right, to what what people can do and what fans can do, and how vicious and how rough they can be when they want something. It came it came to me that it was advantageous that I would put him out there more, but put a lot of more security around him. So after the shows, I would take him immediately and put him in a truck, keep him away from people. But all our wrestlers, they all became, they were all well known in their communities, every one of them. It was like, I can't remember all of them because there was over 100 of them. Um, if I heard some of the names, I would know them. Their faces I know. Um, some of them still keep in touch with me. I think the most memorable wrestlers I ever met, or I should say, was shocked that I met, was one day I was looking out my office window and I see this Cadillac drive up. And there was these two big black guys in the Cadillac, and they kept looking at my office. So I looked out the window and I figured maybe they're interested in wrestling because they kept looking at my office and pointing.
Hmm.
So then I put my hand, I looked out on my desk for something. I saw the door open to the Cadillac. I looked and saw, and they started to get out. So I picked up my pen to write down something. I looked back up in the window. The door was open, but I didn't see nobody. The door was wide open to the caddy, and I couldn't see nobody. So I wondered what happened to them. The next thing I knew, I seen two little midgets walk around the door of the caddy. I couldn't understand how they drove that thing. Then I found out talking to them when they came to my office, they put wooden blocks on the gas pedal and the brake pedal so they can reach it. And they wanted to come to my office and they wanted to wrestle. I believe their name was Tiny the Terrible and
Half Nelson.
Hap Nelson,
Yeah.
which really enriched my show because they were two characters. All right. And you could never tell what they were going to do in the ring because those two was like, there was the truth about our wrestling, none of it was script other than the training to make sure that nobody hurt each other because I would want to see what they were doing because I didn't want anything getting out of hand, anybody getting hurt. All right, and to make sure that the audience know that there was no violence there. But those two, all right, it was like it was half gesture and half wrestling.
Yeah.
All right, I'm grateful to them all because we had quite a lot of shows, a lot of good shows. The WWF people who came enhanced our shows. Drew When they came, it drew a lot more money to the school or to the charity that we were doing. Everything from Jake the Snake. Nick, there's so many of them. Um, Lou Albino. The and what the fallout of this was that I wound up on two of WWF's shows. By Vince McMahon put me in a show on a bar. There was a bar scene one day in I think it was in Smithfield, where they had me sit down in a chair in a bar. I don't drink, but I had a bottle of beer in front of me, and I was sitting in the corner, and they had this barroom brawl, knocked over my table and everything else, and I got involved with it, but I didn't get hurt or nothing like that. It was like I had kind of. And the second one was at the Civic Center in Providence. They had me in the back hallway, all right, because for some reason or another, Vince liked me. He liked my show. He couldn't understand why it was so successful because he said something to me that could have sort of like made me laugh, but it also kind of made me think. He said, your wrestlers aren't really all that good, but their costumes are fantastic and which makes the show. He goes, your show is entertaining me actually more in some cases than mine because there's less talk, more action, and there's no real script as to who the winner is going to be or who the favorite is, which surprised me. I think that when I look back at all this now, I guess I was a pioneer on this in Rhode Island. I think I set the foundation down for not realizing it for the people who came after me. My wish and hope was that a lot of the people who are wrestling today at least are off the streets. All right, that we accomplished more than just wrestling. I hope and pray that most of the people that wrestle for me or the ones that today remember what we did. And I just when I look back at it, I feel that I accomplished something.
Yeah.
I feel like that I showed my son and my family that anybody can do anything they want if they really want to do it. I had no idea about wrestling other than seeing it on TV, watching my son who sat on the couch, who went crazy over it, and I thought to myself, you know what? Let me give a shot at it. All right. I really didn't have that many hobbies or anything like that, so I figured let me try that. I believe that whoever watches this and hear my voice, do whatever you can, do whatever you want, do whatever you think you can't do it anyway. Try it. You can't. If you fail, at least you tried. If you don't try, you already failed.
And did you have people helping you behind the scenes, or was it just you kind of doing everything and putting all of these things together? Did you have a booker, or did you do the booking?
No, my son and I did the booking. We would go to the different places ourselves. I did most of that. I was lucky because I had people who volunteered their cameras and who did the TV work and stuff. These were all volunteers who came to me to do it. Um, but as far as the booking is concerned, the choreography, I allowed that to the wrestlers itself, but more or less it was me and a little group of guys putting the show, putting the ring up, taking it back down. But I did most of the back work with my son. We would we'd go to schools and set up everything, talk to them. And like I said, if it wasn't for the fact that my wife knew so many people or had been involved with so many people, I had those kind of contacts. So I was capable of that. And I learned something from my wife watching her. She was able to do anything she wanted to do, get involved with so many community things and so forth, so many people. So I kind of took like a chip from that and did. If she can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
All right. So I kind of have to give her kind of credit to that. But we weren't a big organization. It was just me and my son. All right. And we did all the groundwork. It's not hard to do what you want to do if you take the time to do it. Everything is really simple as long as you don't make it complicated.
Right.
I would go directly to the school, talk to the individual that needed to be talked to. That's it. I would write out the contract, set the date, and all the rest would be us just showing up, setting up the ring, setting up our camera crew up, all right, our announcer, like Steve Pelletier and a few others. We have my son would announce, and then just put the show on. That was the extent of our great enterprise. After it was over, we put the stuff back in the truck, took it down to the garage, put it in the garage, and that was the extent of our business. But on TV, because we had the TV, and because we put on a good show and put on a good front, all right, we looked professional. We acted professional. But looking back at it now, as I say again, anyone can do anything they want if they put their mind to it. It does not cost that much. All it costs is your time and your belief.
And you mentioned Steve Pelletier. Obviously, for fans that don't know that name, he was Rex Havoc, of course, one of the voices of the NEWA.
Oh yeah,
Any
unmasked.
personal memories of Rex Havoc?
When I first met him, he was a lawyer. He is still a lawyer. I got to talking to him about something about a case that had nothing to do with me, but um, he was happened to be in I believe a coffee shop, and I heard him talking about a particular case, and he was talking about a vehicle, and I said to him, I said, I stopped and I said, I know that type of vehicle, and I know what was wrong, the problem they had with that. And we got to be friends, and he was a lawyer, and he said, what do you do? And I said, I run a wrestling show. And he said, I said, he said, the way he said it was funny. He said, is there anything I can do for you? And with his personality, he said, you could be an announcer. Never realized he'd show up with a mask and become Rex Havoc. All right. In fact, I just talked to him the other day. All right. And he said to me, he said he wanted to do a podcast or get the show back together. I said, I'm 86 years old. Them days are long gone. But he still remembers as it was of yesterday. And he said to me the other day, he said, of all the things that I can say in my life that made me happy, being with the NEWA did. It gave me an opportunity to release my stress because he's a lawyer. And we still talk today. Most of the wrestlers I talk, like some of them are, I still associate. A lot of them actually call me today. We got together. My son got me together with a group and went out to dinner with a lot of them. a few times. I believe it's Danger Boy, who has his own little show now, or podcast. Um, One of my wrestlers has their own show now here in Rhode Island. Rhode Island Wrestling. I'm not really sure of the owner of it. I do know about it. Some of the wrestlers that work for me are on that show, but I think that's a fallout from my show. In other words, that was something that was born out of mine.
Right.
I understand there's a lot of wrestling shows in Rhode Island today, and that followed up after my beginning. So now when I look back at it and sit in my chair, I think I accomplished more than I expected or was able to do, and I'm grateful for that.
And you mentioned a facility that you would often do the training in. Where was that facility located back then, and how
It was
often
in
did the guys do it?
it, it was in Oneyville. What it was it was a mill. So I went down to that mill because somebody told me that they had a lot of empty buildings in that mill, empty, empty. What's So I went down there and I talked to the owner. Well, not the owner, the guy who was running it. And I said to him, "Can I rent one of these spaces? And how much is it?" And because at that time the mill was really empty, there wasn't very many people. He gave me one unit that was like, I would say, 200 feet by 200 feet for $300.
Wow.
And I rented that place, put my ring in there, so my wrestlers could practice. They had a place to practice and keep out of the weather because there was no other place we had. And from there, it just snowballed. We stayed there for quite a while until until I knew that the wrestlers were capable of doing it. After a while, maybe about 6 or 8, 10 months, we didn't need the gym because everybody knew what they were doing. They practiced at home or with themselves. So it was like they didn't have the time from where they were working or the school and then come at night to practice. So we gave that up and we went from there. And it was just like spontaneous after that.
Yeah.
They were just we would tell them what the show was, when it was. I had an office on Cranston Street in Cranston where we all met there, talk over our wrestling. Everybody would be there. We'd have some treats, drinks, and so forth, lounge chairs and stuff. We all get together, talk over our show, and we did our half an hour TV show there, off the ropes, for interviews for either wrestlers, so they'd be exposed to the public, and get everybody got to know each other there, talk their wrestling shows over, or their matches over, and sort of it was like a comradeship and more of like a club. Everybody came there, spent a couple hours on a weekend, unless we were doing a show or a half an hour off the ropes, and then do the show and went their ways.
And you would often book Greg the Hammer Valentine, Tito Santana from the World Wrestling Federation. What was it like working with them?
Bam Bam Bigelow, Nicholas. You know what? One thing about them is when in the ring, they look like they're very vicious. But when I get to meet them, the majority of them, actually all of them, are really, really nice people. Most of them are soft token. In fact,
There it is, 1994, March.
And then
North
there's a few others.
Providence.
I had Bam Bam Bigelow, um, with Mick, Jake the Snake. I had quite a few of them. There was
Yeah, the
like
Warlord,
the Warlord. Um, I always
Virgil,
wanted to try and get Macho Man, but I couldn't get him. I got Bam Bam Bigelow. I got Jake the Snake. I got Mick Neidhart. I got Tito Santana. I got um, well, Jake the Snake. I know that. And then there was Ironheart, Jim Ironheart, what his name was.
Jim the Anvil
Uh,
Neidhart. Yep.
I had
Brutus Beefcake.
Bruce. Yep, I had him. I would say I had about 15 wrestlers, 20 from the W, and that was mostly because Vince McMahon, and then they sort of kind of passed the word to the other ones because they knew it was for charity. All right. So as long as I paid their way up, their ticket, they would do the show. I you normally would cost me $500. That was the normal, and that came out of my pocket. But was like, but what it did was threefold. One, it really energized my wrestlers. Two, it drew a bigger crowd for the people we were saving the money for, buying the money for. And three, all right, it enhanced us as far as popularity is concerned, wanting people to come in, which was good for the charities, the schools, and the churches. So we always had that crowd, not knowing when we were going to bring a WWF wrestler in, plus what we were doing. When I look back at it, I still can't figure out how we did this. It's like it snowballed into something that I never anticipated or could have ever imagined.
Yeah.
The popularity, and we became so popular that we actually went to Pennsylvania and did shows in Pennsylvania.
Oh wow.
All right, we went all the way down there because they heard of us, and we went down there and did shows down there. All right, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. All right, it was like how would I say it would be? It's like it was a dream beyond possible dreaming.
Yeah.
But there comes a time, like everything else, comes to an end. But like I said before, what became because of us, I'm grateful for, and I hope the tradition stays on and is carried on. Mostly for the not only the people who are watching it, but for the kids who are involved with it, so they stay off the streets, off from gangs, off from drugs. All right, and accomplish something in their lives, and to make them understand that they can do anything they want if they really want to do it.
And two individuals that you mentioned earlier on, Alfredo, Wolverine. Of course, they were regulars with the NEWA. What memories do you have of those two gentlemen?
Probably some of the funniest characters I ever met. One of the things about them was the loyalty between the two of them. Number one. Number two, the loyalty they had for me, the encouragement they gave me. All right. The the closeness we became, they believed in what we were doing. All right. And they would actually talk to the other wrestlers too. I became very good friends with them, still are. In fact, I was with them last week. Um, I can truthfully say that I have a lot of friends, but they're very close. They're like brothers or sons.
Yeah.
The thing that impresses me most about them too is they're still doing what we're wrestling at their age, all right, and still have that desire. I'm not so much about the ability, but the desire, all right. And they're still in the ring, and they still go around and do shows for charities and for schools, and that in itself, and churches, and that in itself, to me means that it was worth it.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the fact that I met these two.
And you mentioned sons. Of course, you said you did a lot of the booking behind the scenes with your son, Rock Joseph, as everybody knows him.
Without
Rock
him, I
Joseph,
couldn't have done it. Without,
and,
without him, that would not exist.
and Rock Joseph, of course, was a commentator. He was a ring announcer. He would go on to do different things, in front of the crowd as well. What was it like working with your son and being able to do all of this with your son?
Besides being magic, it brought us closer. How would I put it? He he not only made me what I am today, he turned out to be better than I ever expected or wanted. I'm lucky to have him.
And it started off with you wanting to do this whole project for your son, and then
Well, if it
fast
wasn't for him,
forward.
I would have never done it because he's the one who started. Actually, made me start it. He sat on
Exactly.
the couch watching the WWF, and I used to watch him go crazy when I was friends. Like, what is so important about this thing? What makes him so happy? All right. And then I thought to myself, that would be a way for me to to make me closer to him and to show him that anything can be done if you want to do it. Uh, I think that has a lot to do to what he is today. The important thing is it exposed him to people where he learned to communicate with people, something I'm very tough at. All right. Um, Understanding people and probably would have to say helping people if he understands them better than I do, mostly because of his age and the new ops today, the new generation. All right, but he's also grown up the old school. I'm the old Italian, so his foundation is based on his word, his beliefs. If he gives you his word on something, he's going to keep it. But if he says no, take my word for it, it's no. Um, Intelligent wise, surpassed me a long time ago. I've been kind of lucky. A lot of families don't stick together. My family is close. My son is close with my daughter and my grandchildren. His family, our family is very close. One of the things I think that came out of all of this, his ability to do things he did, was his daughter. The fact that his daughter turned out the way she did, going to St. Mary's at Notre Dame, him doing all the work, sending her to private school, working, pushing her. Today she's working for a company. I don't think that would have happened if he didn't have the foundation that came out of the NEWA, of him meeting people, seeing what the world was like, the good and the bad. There's a lot of good to this, but unfortunately, there's some wrestlers fell to the wayside. Nothing is 100%. Having said that, I think the scale weighs we did more good than harm. I hope they remember, if not at least try to pass down what they do know, so the new generation at least keeps keeps the ball rolling.
And one of my favorite venues or events that you would always put on every year was always the Federal Hill Festival. It was always a special feel. You'd always expect NEWA to be there, and you always were. How did that go about? How did you get, to be a part of that festival each year?
I'm gonna tell you, I'll leave it at that. But other than that, we put on shows up there, which was we did it for charity and for the churches. One of the most memorable parts of that show was we had two actual police officers. We call them the maniac cops. We put them in that ring, all right, to wrestle, all right. That in itself exposed the police department to the crowd and to the people to know that they're not all bad, all right. And police officers are like anybody else. They're human beings. They have goals and desires and hopes and beliefs like everybody else does. So putting them in a ring and actually letting them wrestle against each other was not only a treat to the people, but it also gave a message that we're all human, that we're all the same, and even though we have different beliefs or different jobs, doesn't necessarily mean we're enemies. All right. And they enhanced the program, going to schools, bringing cops to wrestle was an anomaly, all right, an enigma, all right. But it sort of kind of exposed them, the police departments, that everything is all now black and white. Everything is not us against you, all right. At least I try to put that picture in there. That's one of the reasons I accepted him. And by the way, John Middle, who was one of the police officers, was a very good friend of mine. He ran the Italian St. Mary's Club up here in Cranston, so I got to know him very well. He also worked out of the Attorney General's office, so I kind of would, if I had a problem with a wrestler that I can ask him to help with, he would do it. So it was like there was a lot of benefits to it. But the most important thing was I was shocked that they actually agreed to do it. To get full grown cops to come in the ring dressed, all right, that and call themselves the maniac cops and actually do a show, especially on Federal Hill, because you know where that was at.
Yeah.
All right. The Italians and the police department exactly on they don't waltz together in the same ballroom. So it's like, And it was kind of like a novelty as well as a treat. When I look back at it, uh, kind of shocked that it actually happened. But and I still friends with them. Police department in Providence still remembers. Once in a while, I run across somebody, a retired cop officer or something, and say, "Well, I remember you. Aren't you the one who put the show with them crazy cops?" And yeah, I remember him. It's like people remember things. Unfortunately, sometimes the good and the bad, but people remember. I A lot of shows were memorable for me to remember at my age now. I can remember, once in a while it comes. I can remember the shows like where that would stand out, like one we had in Johnston once. All right, where I had a wrestler by the name of Trash, not realizing he worked for the city of Johnston. So when I went down to the mayor's office to ask to put a show on in one of the schools, all right, for some reason or other, he said, yeah, without actually questioning me about left and right, not realizing later on that this particular wrestler had been working for them 15 years, part of the head of the department of I'm not sure of I call his name was Trash, but Task, I think, or something like that.
Thrash.
Trash. I used to call him Trash. He used to say to me, Rocco, you call me trash. It's trash. But I got to be real good friends with him, and I think he was partly responsible for me getting into the police department's gym down there in Owenville. I mean, in Johnston, they had a basketball court, so they allowed us to go in there. Very small, but we allowed us to put on a show down there, and I believe we did that for the police department.
And one of your biggest stars was the late Anthony Ruffo, who of course was
Oh yeah,
he was Dambula for you for quite some time, and then he went on to be Marvin the Maniac. He wrestled Bam Bam Bigelow at the Cumberland Fest. He wrestled Jim the Anvil Neidhart. What are your memories of the late Anthony Ruffo?
I call him Bamboula. Probably one of the best persons I can honestly say who not only had a great personality, but somebody you could really well like. He was honest, and he had a good heart. He When I first talked to him, when we were talking about his name, um, we were trying to pick a name for him, and I said to him, "How about the name of Dambula?" And he goes to me, "Who is Dambula? What is that?" I said, "It's a Zulu warrior chief, all right, who was the head of the Zulu warriors in South Africa in the 16th century, 17th century, fighting the British. All right." I said, "That was who he was." All right. Took that name, Bambola. All right. I remember him. He thought about it, looked at me. Okay, I like that because it represented something. It represented somebody, and it was heritage, whether you liked it or not. All right. Not necessarily his, but it was heritage. All right. It was history. Most of the wrestlers, all right, who had costume took names. I remember when I was doing wrestling, there was a lot of trouble going on in the Middle East. A lot of people didn't like Arabic people because of the problems they were having with the West and so forth. I had a guy who wanted to wrestle for me from East Providence, who had a very open mind. So I sat him down and I said to him, I'm going to make you and give you the name of a character that I want you to play. And I want you to dress up like him. And he said, who is that? His name is going to be Ahmed Ben Mohammed. And you're going to dress like an Arab. And you're going to go in the ring and dress and fight that with that name. All right. A lot of people didn't understand, or they probably went over their heads and through the woods. All right. But it was a statement by me. All right. That I don't give a sugar about people's politics or beliefs in relationships to who you hate and who you like. All right. Made himself and became well known. Crowds booed him, but that was okay. That helped. All right. But the character became famous. Another one was Gino Giovanni. When I made that character, I made most of his uniforms. All right. With the understanding that you had to draw. One thing about wrestling, the most important individuals in wrestling who come to see the show are women, not men, but women. They come for two reasons. They either like the character or they like the violence. And unfortunately, I didn't have the violence part and I didn't want it. All right. But they like the characters. There was always that one person, all right, like either a Hulk Hogan or 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 say Macho Man or somebody that stood out. In that case, it was him. I had a lot of wrestlers that stood out, all right, but there were certain ones that really stood out, like the midgets, Bambula, um, Ahmed Muhammad, Gino Giovanni. Um, then you had Studley Stallion, all right. There was a lot of wrestlers who actually stood out, but then there was also ones that stood out as jokers and funny, like um, Alfredo and Wolverine, or the midgets. All right. So it was like a combination of both fun and sort of like a statement. Most of our crowds didn't realize it because they were young kids, schools and stuff like that. But I also did it to older people who would look at our show on TV, all right, hoping they got the message, all right. But having said that, when I look back at everything, I still say again, I just can't believe, all right, how much this snowballed into what it became and what we accomplished.
And eventually you would go on to add the RIWA to the mix. How did that
Right.
go about? When did you decide you wanted to do a second promotion, and why did that happen exactly?
I got involved with that because of when I was coming down, stopping. I still wanted to keep in my hand in there, So I didn't necessarily have. I was. I had my hand in there, but I really didn't run the whole thing. It was run by somebody else. All right, but it was more or less carrying on the tradition. All right. Also, not only tradition, but hoping that it eventually that it, others there would be offsprings to it, and it did come about.
Yeah.
But as far as running the organization or having that much to do about it, I really didn't. I had no control or discussion or hiring anything or getting involved, putting the shows together or getting the shows. I more or less was like just a contributing factor to it.
And another one of your stars that you had for quite a long time. You mentioned Studley Steve Stallion. He had the big feud with Dragonfly, Greg Drago. What are your memories of them?
Dragonfly was a very good friend of mine. He worked for me on the side for a construction company for a friend of mine. I've known Dragonfly probably, I'd say 5 or 6 years before the show started. I known him. In fact, I still know him. In fact, I talked to him the other day. He just texted me the other day. Um, he's from South Providence. He um, he was a very key person to me. He was always with me. He was loyal to me. He helped me a lot. He'd help me take the ring down when a lot of people didn't. All right. Um, Towards the end, it was just me and him taking the ring down, or my son. That ring was like the poles were 300 pounds apiece. Just the poles that held the ring up on the sides, the post. So we would take the ring down. So he was a contributing factor that kept the show alive because without him, I couldn't take that ring down by myself. A lot of the wrestlers used to leave because they had families and so forth.
Yeah.
So him and my son probably were the one, and maybe sometimes um, Sean Markey and a few others would help, but most of the time it was Dragon, me and Dragon and my son. Load the truck, unload it, take it down, unload it, put it in the ring, bring it back home. He stayed with me to the very end. Him, Alfredo, and a few others that stayed. Um, I can say he was a contributing factor that kept NEWA alive too. He still is a friend of mine. I've known him a long time. Good wrestler.
And another great star that you had for quite a long time was Bad Boy Billy Black. Any memories of Bad Boy?
He was a character. That boy was a character. You never knew from minute to minute what was going on with him when he got in the ring. He was like two different personalities. In the ring, he was one. Outside the ring, he was another. Really a nice guy, all right? If he made a friend out of you, you were his friend, all right? Loyal, always showed up for wrestling, for the shows. Someone you can always count on. That was very important about wrestlers. There was a certain nucleus of wrestlers that would show up that you can count on, and there was the ones that were either late or couldn't show up or didn't show up, and he was one of them. I'm surprised you mentioned him because you know what? Not too many people know him. And he's well known now, but when I first started, nobody knew who he was.
Yeah.
But he's a character.
Yep. Yeah, one of the regulars for NEWA for quite a while, and you also had a lot of big men in the ring for quite some time. There, you had Judge Grable, you had the Headhunters, you
Oh yeah,
had the Party Man Juan King. Any
Warren King.
memories? Yeah, memories from any of them?
Well, to tell you the truth, it was like one of the biggest memories of the shock that I had them to get them, and the fact that they actually came, put on a show. And you know, the amazing thing about most of these wrestlers is when you see them on TV for the WWF or for professional shows, they look so vicious.
Right.
When you meet them in person, all right, they're really nice people. They're really gentle, normal people, all right. And the facade they put on in the ring is like totally different when you meet them, all right. It's like, and that they also talked to my wrestlers and gave them encouragement, all right. And then my wrestlers would look at them and see that they accomplished something and they got to where they are, maybe possibly they can, all right. So there was hope. There was an inflection of hope and desire to do and try to be like them, and that helped.
And two other regulars that you had was Double A, Antonio Adams. He was
Oh
doing
yeah.
all the high flying, and then you also had
Whoa. I don't. To be honest with you, I just don't know how they never got hurt
yeah.
because the things they used to do in the ring was like. It's one thing to see them on TV, but it's another thing to see them in person when they're doing it. I mean, the exposure and the shock is totally different. All right, and it's like you're totally amazed, and then when you talk to them, it's like it's nothing to them.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's like supernatural, something that's like almost impossible to do. But then when you talk to them, it's like an everyday thing to them. It's like normal. It's like it's an experience.
And one of your greats in ring, in my opinion, one of your better wrestlers was El Diablo, Jose Perez.
He wrestled for not only for me, but he also wrestled for another Spanish organization. He was really good. He was the one that got me the to do the show. He helped me get that show, the Spanish show I did down in Providence. All right, for the Spanish club.
Yep.
He's the one that got me that, and also the one on Elmwood Avenue, the club they had there. He was instrumental in getting those shows for me. Really, him and I became very good friends. He was like, if he's another one who gave his word to you, he would do something for you. He did it, and if he said he was going to try and do something for you, if you asked him to do it, he would never say no. He'd say yeah, and he would go do it. And I could say that he was responsible for 3 or 4 good shows I got from the Spanish, which I never would have gotten because I didn't speak the language. All right, so he was more like my in between to them, and he volunteered, came to me and volunteered and asked me would I do shows for him. He went and got them for me. I didn't ask him; he did it as a favor to me. All right, and I can truthfully say that in relation to him, he was another one that contributed to us being where we are today. So it's like as you remind me of these people, I remember these things.
Yeah.
All right. There was a lot of people, wrestlers, who actually helped us in different ways. All right. But some we did over 300 shows. So it's very hard for me to remember all of them. But if you say something to me, eventually it comes to me and stands out. All right. Then I can tell you about that character or who that individual was or what his contribution to the organization was. But the most important thing of all the wrestlers was their loyalty. They were all loyal to the NEWA, and they were all loyal to me for some reason or another. They all looked at me as like the old man. I wasn't all that old, at least I didn't think I was. All right.
Another
Um,
gentleman who was a regular for you was the late Dave Jackson, Chain Link.
he had a lot to do with me starting this organization too. Because when I first had my son and I wanted to do it, Chain Link actually was doing some shows on the side with a ring he had. But because he was sick and he couldn't do what he could do, he's the one I bought the ring from because he couldn't do it anymore. And it was just a little show he had between him and a few friends. They would put a show on in their backyard and so forth like that. Um, and I sat down with him and he explained to me how he was doing it and how he got started. So I got an idea from him. All right. Because, like I said, when I first started, I had no idea, no knowledge at all about this, other than seeing my son sitting on the couch, jumping up and down, watching the WWF.
Yeah.
Right. So when I had a desire to want to do it, first thing in my mind was him. So I went to see him and talked to him about it, and he helped me along a little bit, explained to me the do's and don'ts. All right. But in his case, he never had insurance on the wrestlers and stuff like that, so everything was on the fly a little bit, so you had to be careful. All right. Me, because I was in business and working with business people, my foundation had to be that it had to be secure, both medically and insurance wise, and safety was important to me. All right. And safety of the individuals were important. So without me getting insurance, I would have never done it. Absolutely. And that was something that I learned from him. That was one of the reasons that he quit.
And what advice do you have for somebody who's maybe looking to be a promoter now in today's pro wrestling and they're thinking about getting involved?
I would say, even though I'm not an expert, I would say that first you have to have the desire to do it and the will. You really don't need the money. What you really need is partnership with somebody. You can't today because of the cost, because of the mentality, the 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 political beliefs, so forth. You have to have at least a small nucleus coalition of people who can advise you, all right, and to believe in what you're doing. But before you do that, it's like anything nowadays. When I did it without no foundation. Today, you can't do that. Today's a different world, different beliefs, different ideologies, and so forth. So you have to have some kind of a nucleus of two or three or four people, all right, who not only have the ability, but the connections, because that's important now, today, and some kind of a financial foundation, all right. It doesn't necessarily have to be a lot. One thing you have to learn about this business is this: anybody who wants to start this business on a grand scale will fail. You can't do that. You have to start from basics. And basics is you start small.
Right.
Get yourself a ring, get a couple of people that believe in you, get enough money to afford to buy the truck to take it back and forth, all right, and then go to the schools like Alfredo's doing today, all right. Stay small. Stay, lay a groundwork down of maybe 3 or 4 or 5 institutions or schools and stay with that until you really have a strong foundation. and seeing if there is a future to it. But that's in anything you do. But in wrestling, it's different because the most important thing in wrestling is not what you do, it's who you bring in. All right. In order to do that, two things are important. One, you have to look good, and two, you have to make people want to come. And in order to do that, you have to put on a good product. If you don't have it, all right, it doesn't make a difference how many people you have, all right, or who you are or how much money you have. That's the important thing. Is to believe in yourself, put a foundation down, and the people who come to wrestle with you, make sure that they're in your court, all right, and they know what they're doing. The important thing is to have fun when you do it. All right. I find that the shows I did, one of the things I always told my wrestlers was, don't talk a lot in the ring. People came to see you do something,
Yeah.
not hear you talk. They don't care what you're saying to the other guy. They're interested more in you throwing the guy across the ring and wrestling. They came to see a show. It's not how well you put the show on, it's that you put the show on. That you did something that somebody did, all right, that they liked. That's the important thing.
What would you say is the biggest challenge of being a promoter?
Believing in yourself, number one. And number two, having the ability to go out and meet and communicate with people in order to do what you want to do. Those are the big things. The other thing is, all right, the key to small organizations like mine, all right, is to go to people who need your help. All right. It's not what you want, it's what they want. If you can help somebody to do something, you'll become successful. If you can't, you'll be it won't work.
And of course, your other ring announcer, commentator, Bob the Padre Cleese.
Like I said, during the during the time that I ran this thing, there were characters, all right, and they stand out. Like I said, for you to tell me, then I'll remember because there were so many of them, all right. But that was another character, and there was another one. He was loyal, all right. He would give his opinion on something, and you know what? If you were smart enough, you listen to it, all right. A lot of times he would see things that I don't see, even though I've got four eyes, two glasses, and two eyes. All right. There are things sometimes you don't see. A lot of times my son would do that. All right. Point out things like when he did a commentating, I'd say, well, no, you should do, no, Dad, well, this is where it should go. All right. So I would never bother him. All right. So very seldom I would correct somebody, especially if I didn't know, because that's being stupid. All right. Um, always take advice, and he was one for giving it. Khalees was one. If he saw something he didn't like or he didn't think it was right, he would tell you it.
Yeah.
He was not so much tell you, but suggest it to you. There's a way of telling people things, you know, and he had an expertise for that, right? You know, so he stood out. There's a lot of people who stand that over the years that would say things to me, although I never said anything to anybody else about it. All right, but I always took it in stride, and when I got home, I sit down and think about it. All right, probably at the time I disagreed with him, but then when I got back and sat down and I closed my door in my room and thought about it, all right, and thinking about the next show, and I'd say, well, and looking at the tapes, and then realizing, he's right. I was wrong. This should be this way. This should be that way. Because, like I said before in the beginning when I talked to you, this was a family orientated show. I didn't want any violence or fall talk. All right. And it was important that when the people left, not only were the people happy, but the individuals who hired us were happy. All right. And to follow the rules. And sometimes these wrestlers, like him in particular, and others, including my son, would point out things you should do and so you shouldn't do. And it was always important that, and I learned the hard way that you have to, sometimes you have to bend and accept, even though you don't like it or you think you know it all. One thing I learned about wrestling, I didn't know it all. Especially as I got to meet people, I realized more and more and more how dumb I really was. All right. And how much people helped me on the way. Even though I never said anything to anybody, all right, and probably never thanked them as much as I should have. And maybe I'm getting an opportunity now. But if it wasn't for all of them, I could have never done it by myself. So if you were to think that I did it by myself, absolutely not. All right. Without them, this would have never existed,
Yeah.
nor would I have.
Another great baby face from your promotion was Kid Liberty. Any memories of Kid Liberty?
Kevin Liberty kind of struck me as the kind of guy who very intense when he did his wrestling. You know, always never wanted to make a mistake. All right. And sometimes he would come to me and say, "Well, I didn't mean that. I know you didn't like that particular being rough on that." And I would just look at him and he'd say, "Well, that was that was a mistake and it couldn't be helped." But he was another character that stood out. All right. And he was kind of a quiet person. You know, he he wouldn't say something unless he really had to say something. All right. But you can tell that he was happy and grateful for what he was doing. And again, and one time he did say he was thankful for the fact that I even hired him because one thing about me was I hired everybody. My policy was if you had the desire to do it, even if you didn't know how to do it and you wanted to try it, I would give you a shot. I never said no to anybody. But if you got in the ring and you were violent, then you got the other side of me. I would get rid of you in a flash of a second. All right? Because there was one thing I had, one rule I had, and everybody knew it: no violence, or you're gone. No cursing in the ring, or you're gone. Because you're dealing with children, you're dealing with schools, you're dealing with church, you're dealing with people, and they look upon you, they look at you, they look up to you. And that was my policy. Other than that, you can go in the ring, do your own show. I wouldn't tell you how to do it, but you had a time schedule. That much I would tell you. All right. I would tell you. I wouldn't tell you who you'd wrestle with unless you had no partner. You were allowed to pick your own. You were allowed to dress the way you wanted to. You were allowed to wrestle the way you wanted to. All right. But you always had to be on time. All right. Always decent to the people when you got out of the ring. Be nice to the crowd as you're passing by. All right. Those are my rules. You show up for the meetings we had at my office. We had the lounge and everything. Show up for off the ropes. All right. Other than them rules, I had no control. I never took control over the wrestler to tell them what this is what I want, the way you want to do it. I didn't. I let them freelance And that was very important because I never paid them. In return, they went on TV and became famous. All right. They their family saw who they were and saw their accomplishment. And that was the most important thing to them. And the most important to me was raising funds for schools and charities and churches. So it was a win-win situation on both ends. All my wrestlers knew I didn't have a lot of money, so they knew I couldn't afford to pay them. But they all came anyway. So even now, I get a chance to thank them. I thank everybody who was involved and helped me and showed up.
And one of the tag teams that you had there for the NEWA was Fire and Ice, Iceberg, Sunny D, and Inferno. What are your memories of them?
They're like the Maniac Cops, a real. They were really a crazy group. Those two, all right. When they got in the ring, it was like no holds barred between the two of them. All right. And a tag team, from what I remember about them, they knew what they were doing. I don't know if they practiced at home or whatever, but those two guys knew what they were doing, and they were loyal. They were too. They, which amazed me that they showed up because I wasn't paying anybody. All right. They came because they wanted to, and they came because it was charity to help people. And that in itself showed me who they were.
I
And that
remember
was
the
important.
Absolutely. And I remember the NEWA was at the Carousel, Crescent Park Carousel, Riverside, Rhode Island, 1995, and it was headlined by King Sleazy versus King Cheesy.
Cheesy. Yeah.
Yeah, one on one. And what are your memories of some of the referees of the NEWA? Sean Markey, Bob Costa, of course, Ish Perez.
Esperez. So, you know what it was with the most of the referees, like, they seemed to more or less, except for Perez, most of them got in the way of the wrestlers. Oh, really. It's like they would try to break them up, and they were just like part of the act, but they weren't refereeing anybody because these guys would be like, they would do what they want. But then again, they put on a good show, and the referees were like, how can I say it? It was like it was part of the clown act, really.
Yeah,
All right, because except for Perez, he was a little bit more professional. All right, made it look good anyway.
sure.
But Sean Markey was like, it was like get out of the way most of the time. All right,
Yeah,
but you had to have a referee in there.
right.
But they were good, and the fact that they showed up and actually got in the ring, all right, knowing that they can get hurt because they can be banged by a wrestler, in itself was a win. So having said that, that I appreciated them, all right, and they contribute like everybody else did.
And all these years, all the different things you've been a part of, all the accomplishments within the NEWA, what would you say your number one favorite moment in the business is if you had to pick one moment that you've been a part of?
That's a tough one because there was a lot of them. Uh, I think the most important thing was my first show because it showed me that I can do it. Number one. Number two, I helped somebody I didn't know, in this case, the school. All right. And number three, it proved to me that the wrestlers wanted to do it, that I had a crew and I had a group of people who were not only dedicated, but wanted to do it. That shocked me. It was like when you first do something and you accomplish it, you're totally shocked and you don't believe it. All right. That one and my last show was only because I knew it was my last show. All right. Those are the two that really stood out to me. You know, but the first show is the one of all of them because I didn't think I could do it. I tried it. I wasn't sure it would be successful. And actually, to tell you the truth, after I did it, went home and everything, I wasn't still sure I was successful until they booked me again, until I was able to go and book another one. Then I realized, you know, I laid the foundation. Then I realized I can do it. Then I realized then, all right, that I accomplished something. And my object was to make sure that I didn't let it drop the ball and keep doing it. All right. And sometimes it was tough. Bad weather, things didn't work out. Some people didn't show. All right. Money was tight. All right. Taking the ring down by myself with two people myself was tough because that ring was like 5 tons with all the wood and everything, steel and everything, maybe 2 tons. Probably a little bit more than that because it was an old boxing ring from Madison Square Garden, so it was heavy and big and solid. I mean, there was some how do you say it? There was sometimes doubts. Do I really still want to do this? All right. Sometimes a pain in my shoulders and back and everything from taking it down and stuff. All right. Sometimes interfering with my work. All right. Then I have to take time to set up the rest of the show, to set up the storylines, to set up the insurance, to set up the communications, set up the cameras and the TV people, talking to, getting the tape edited, then setting it up so you can put it on public access. These are all things behind the scenes you had to do.
Yeah.
All right. Took a lot of time. All right. Sometimes it would, you want to give up. All right. Because sometimes it got overwhelming. Sometimes you got tired. But the most important thing was, all right, never allow yourself to beat yourself. Never allow yourself to say, I quit. Because the only one that get hurt when you do that is yourself, nobody else. I used to tell my son all the time and my family, when you close the door after you're hurt in your room, the only one that feels it is you. Nobody else cares. So you need to take care of yourself, be honest to yourself, all right? And what's more important than anything else is to believe in yourself and don't give up. I have a saying I tell my family always. I'd rather say I did than to be sorry I say I didn't.
And there's a few more individuals to touch on if you have any memories. There was Bulldozer, there was Draven, the Dream Lord, and there was also the comic.
Like I said, you had a lot of characters. Bulldozer was funny because Bulldozer was big. He had the right name. All right. Um, the only thing I could say about them was like I say about the other wrestlers, what they did when they did it stood out. They were loyal. They showed up. All right. And they were decent people. The funny thing about all these wrestlers that I met is that people say that people are no good. You can't be trusted. But every one of those wrestlers I met, all right, for some reason or another, they all seem to be compatible. They all seem to got along with each other. It was like I had over 100 wrestlers in my organization off and on. All right. And during that time, all right, of all the people I met, of all those wrestlers, I think there were only one or two that stood out. All right. That really shouldn't have been there because of their attitude. But all the rest, all right, it seemed like, I don't know, maybe I was lucky. All the good people showed up. All right. And they all had that desire. Most important thing is the majority, I would say out of 100 of them, 96% of them did not know how to wrestle or didn't believe I would give them a shot. Came with the impression that they would be turned down because some friend of theirs told them to come and try it anyway. Oh, yeah, Rocco, Mr. Dellasandro, they call him open arms. And I would take, and I remember, I can't remember the young kid's kid. He was small and young and thin. I remember he he asked me to wrestle. And then out of the same words right out of that mouth, right after he said that, he says, I know I'm skinny. I know I'm small. I don't weigh much. And I know you're going to say no. And I looked at him. I said, do you know me? And he goes, no. Then how do you know I'm going to say no? How do you know I'm going to say no?
Yeah.
When you know me, you can speak for me. Until then, I speak for myself. And you can wrestle. You can try. And if you want to say, try it. And if it works for you, fine. If it don't, at least you know, at least you took a shot at it. I remember him real well. I don't remember his name. And he stayed with me for about, I don't know, 4 shows, 5 shows before his mother stopped him because he was too young. When she saw him get thrown across the ring one time during a battle royal, that was it. That was it. She came to the ring and told him, you out.
Then you had
Well,
Bronco Jesse James
yeah,
and also Pierre the Mountie.
Pierre the Mountie. Pierre the Mountie actually worked for the WWF at one time. He wasn't a star in the WWF. They used him as like a fill-in. I made him my champion once because of the connection with the WWF. He was a good wrestler. My problem with him was that there were at times he thought he was too good of a wrestler. So sometimes we had to sit and talk. But having said that, all right, he contributed to the NEWA. All right, he was my champion for a while, and I believe he wrestled a couple of WWF wrestlers, but he never did in my ring. I think I think once he did. I'm not really sure because I'll have to look back at it because I did so many of them. But I think he wrestled one time with a WWF wrestler in my ring, and I'm not really sure whether it was Jim the Nineheart. I'm not really sure. To be honest with you, I can't remember. It's been a while. All right, but he was with me for. He wasn't with me when I first started. He came halfway through. Um, and then the other two you mentioned, um, I
Bronco
don't
Jesse
believe they
James.
started with me. They came in later. See, a lot of guys, like I had a lot of turnover. Some guys would stay with me for like a year, 6 months, or a year, and either because of their job or because of the family or because of health or something, all right, they would fall off. Some would come back. some take time off. So it became very difficult for me sometimes to remember them all. My son would be more inclined to remember them, being he's still young yet and dealt with everybody because he talked to, on the because he was the announcer, so he knew every one of them.
Sure.
All right, where once the show started, I wouldn't get involved. I'd either sit back or I was talking with somebody or so forth like this. All right. After the show was over, when the tapes came, I would look at them to see what if there was any correction that needed to be and so forth like that. But during the show itself, very rarely, I would maybe stay there for a couple of wrestling, and then I'd be off talking to the people who hired me or to the police, because you also had to deal with the police departments because you had to hire the police departments. So you had to negotiate with them how much an hour, all right, how long they were going to be there, all right. And because by law, I always had to have either, it all depends on the city. Like Cranston, I would have 2 policemen. But if I went to Warwick, it would be 4 policemen. If I went to Massachusetts, it was 4 policemen. And they were like $100 an hour. All right. So I would negotiate with them a flat rate. So I'd get 4 policemen for 2 hours for $400. As long as I gave them cash, and it was like, and they get to eat. They got the something to eat and free. It was like I said, we never really made any money, but we did have a good time. We kept people off the streets. We have a good legacy, all right. And what's more important than anything else, I showed my son we could do it. I showed my family we can do it, and I showed the people that you can do anything you want to do if you really want to do it. If you have desire and the hope of doing it.
And in closing, fast forward years from now, what would you like your legacy to be? How do you want to be remembered?
I don't care so much if they remember me. I hope they remember the NEWA and remember that they all had a good time. They all accomplished something. All right. As for remembering me is concerned, I'm just a nobody passing through time. All right. Eventually, people will forget me, but I hope they don't forget the the idea. All right. And I hope they don't forget at least those who remember what we accomplished.
Well, hopefully, this interview will help keep the memories alive for the fans of the NEWA years ago, new fans now that are just hearing about it. Can hear the different details. So, Rocco, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you
Yeah,
here.
it's my pleasure. Excuse me, let me shut this off.
Absolutely. Appreciate you being here, and thank you so much for taking the time today.
And thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
And I want to say it again. I want to tell all the wrestlers, thank you very much for helping me do what I did and what we accomplished.
For Rocco Dellasandro, I'm Joseph Bruen. This has been the All Access Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we will see you all on the next show. Thank you so much for joining us.